Power metal.
Yes, sir.
Power metal. Are you sure this isn't a book about Metallica? Or...
You know, I'm going for the broadest audience I can get.
Yeah.
So.
What is power metal?
So what it's about is, it's about the terrible paradox of electric vehicles and renewable energy.
That's all the time we have for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Please continue.
All right, so the paradox is this. So we are moving towards those things, right? EVs and renewable energy, which is great because we need those things to avoid climate change, which is the biggest threat that we face. But there's a catch.
Yeah.
And the catch is metal. Because to
Right.
build all those things, to build all those millions of electric vehicles, solar panels, wind turbines, and by the way, all of the digital gadgets that we all rely on, our phones and our laptops, everything about the internet.
My phone has metal in it?
Your phone has metal in it, my friend. I don't know about your phone personally.
Yeah, I actually have a wooden phone with a...
There you go.
Okay, so even everybody here has metal on themselves right now.
Yeah. So we need billions of tons of those metals.
Yeah.
So there's a worldwide rush on to get those. They're called critical metals, the same basket of metals that we need for renewable energy and for digital tech.
Wow.
And as a result of that, we are cutting rainforests to the ground. Children are being put to work in mines. Oligarchs are getting
I'm fine
rich.
with the children, but the rainforest stuff...
I know.
So are you...
I'm throwing out a list.
Yeah, are you telling me, honestly, I have young kids and I would love for them to have a job? I mean, it's like... that's funny because of, we know my kids are okay, but when you see the footage and you read about these mines, it's really up.
Yeah.
It's really, really up. And it's even more up when you go, oh, I might be contributing to that in a way.
You might, the cobalt that those kids mined might be in your pocket right now. Not yours, because your phone is wooden. But,
right.
But everybody else.
You're essentially saying there's no such thing as clean energy.
Correct.
What liberal friend are you trying to piss off right now?
Well, I'm just, I'm a journalist, so my job is to just try to tell the truth as best as I can. And there is, renewable energy is much better than fossil fuel powered energy, but it comes with its own cost. It has its own serious downsides. Which is not to say that, you shouldn't buy an EV, that we shouldn't be turning on to renewables. We should be.
Yeah.
But we have to understand they come with serious costs, and we have to do what we can to minimize those costs.
Let's talk about China a little bit, because every single chapter of your book, China shows up.
Yeah.
Are they better than us with, I say us meaning North Americans, with their mining, with their... let me start over. Let me ask a better question.
Sure.
China, go. It's such a big topic and such a big country, it's hard to really pinpoint what...
So in a nutshell, what's happened is, so every single one of these metals that we're talking about, that we absolutely need for EVs, for renewables, and for digital tech, China dominates the entire supply chain of those things. From digging them out of the ground, to refining them into metals, to building to manufacturing them into the actual, car batteries and digital gadgets and all the rest of it. That is a big problem because it gives them enormous geopolitical leverage, right? They've really got us over a barrel with this stuff.
You tell a great story. You follow a man around Vancouver who essentially scraps metal. And what are we talking? What are the more valuable metals that are around? Cobalt, nickel.
Cobalt, nickel. Yep. So
copper.
Copper. Okay. So for a guy like Steve Nelson, who's this scrapper that I followed around in Vancouver, Canada.
I thought my field pieces were tough. I mean, you're literally in Vancouver following a guy in a dumpster picking up metal. Sexy stuff, Vince.
That's right. That's right. That's the glamorous world of journalism, my friend.
Yeah.
So for those guys, copper is the most valuable thing. But Steve is a guy, he's a super entrepreneurial guy who has basically been spending the last 20 years or so just digging through dumpsters in the back alleys of Vancouver for any kind of metal that he can find and sell and recycle. And not just like raw metal, but like old toasters, old light fixtures. He can look at practically any electronic thing and tell you, oh, there's going to be, this much aluminum. There's probably about 6 ounces of copper. I can get $2 for it at today's price. He carries it all on his bicycle. He's got a little cart hooked up to his bike, and he just rides around collecting all this metal and then taking it to a scrapyard.
I don't think about metal every day. I don't think I want to, but now I think I have to. Metal should be more on the forefront of our brains. Should we be more concerned with reusing or refurbishing? the American consumer, this doesn't seem to match up. There's only so much metal we can use, right?
Turns out there's pretty much no limit to how much stuff we can
buy and use, right?
Exactly. But this is where we get into how we can do things better. So we need metals, right? That's what our, so much of our civilization depends on. But we can be way more efficient with how we use it. We can do a lot more recycling, which is exactly what a guy like Steve is doing.
Yeah.
We can also be reusing and repairing our gadgets, right? Like for a long time, all these the manufacturers have deliberately made their things difficult to repair.
Yeah.
So now there's a movement on to force them to basically make Apple and Samsung and everybody else to make it easier to fix their stuff so that it lasts longer. And as consumers, we can also take some responsibility, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to get a new iPhone every single year. Well, you've got that wooden one.
Right,
I understand you need to upgrade.
Recycling, man, is recycling perfect the way we have it now. I throw it in a blue bin. I'm a hero. I don't have to think about it ever again. But talk a little bit about the depth you go in on what it costs and the resources it takes to recycle.
Yeah, so recycling too turns out to have some serious downsides to it. It's really energy intensive, it's really polluting, and it's often done on the backs of the poorest people in the world. So one of the places I went was Lagos, Nigeria, the biggest city in Africa. And I spent some time there with guys who are recycling digital junk, right?
Yeah.
Our old cell phones, laptops. These are guys sitting around with hammers and screwdrivers, just cracking open those things like walnuts and picking out the little bits of metal in them.
You tell a story about people standing around burning electrical wire to be able to later dig into the metal that's in all those charging cords.
Exactly. All our cables, they've got plastic and rubber outside and copper inside. They want the copper, they burn the rest of the stuff, and these guys are just standing around this incredibly thick, toxic, oily, reeking smoke.
Right.
And, I asked one of them, I was like, well, aren't you worried? I mean, these guys are just in flip-flops and T-shirts, no safety equipment, nothing. And I asked one of them, aren't you worried about breathing in all this smoke? And he just said, it's a job. I'm living in Nigeria. This is the only job I've got. And I said, well, how long have you been doing it? He said, since I was 8.
Jesus.
I said, how old are you now? He was 35 years old.
Right. Yeah. Man, I have a drawer at home that has 100 wires in it, 6 iPhones. And don't judge, because you have the same drawer. We all have this drawer. I don't know what to do with the phone.
Yeah.
Right? This is such a North American problem, right?
Right. But it is a real
rich guy problem.
Well, it's a real problem for the world, right? Because all that stuff is just going to waste, right? We could be recycling it, right? But the problem is there just isn't an easy way to do that. So the good news is actually in places like Nigeria, in the developing world, it turns out they're way more efficient at it.
Right.
They recycle something like 90% of their e-waste. Whereas here, only one out of every 6 cell phones gets recycled. The rest gets junked. So there's a lot we can learn from those places,
It's an easy punchline, Trump wanting to take Greenland. Then I read your book. Then I read about Greenland's vast resources of minerals and metals, and I go, oh, this might not be a joke. Mm-hmm. Is this what America has to do to keep up so we can all get the new iPhone all the time? Do you support Trump taking over Greenland through military force?
I do not.
Okay.
I'm from Canada, my friend, and I know we're next after Greenland. So,
That's true.
No.
You wrote like a Canadian. This has hope and sympathy and.
But I spelled color with a U.
Yeah, I spelled color with a U. This might not be a joke about Greenland. We need these metals.
Here's the thing. We need these metals for sure.
Yeah.
And Greenland does have an awful lot of them. There are other places in the world we can get them. So the thing about Greenland, though, it's chock full of especially a bunch of metals called rare earths, which we need for wind turbines. We need them for electric car motors. We also need them for our cell phones. The color red in your cell phone is thanks to one particular metal called europium. No europium, no red in your cell phone.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What?
Yeah.
Europium?
Europium.
That's so funny. Now that sign makes sense that said a europium-free cell phone for sale. No, I've never seen such a thing.
Anyway, but Greenland...
Editors, please edit out that entire statement I just said.
So problem is there are a lot of these metals there, but number one, really hard to get them. Greenland's really far away. The weather's incredibly harsh. Also, the people living in Greenland aren't really that hot on the idea. They've already shot down one rare earth mine that folks tried to open up there because they didn't want all the, all the environmental chaos that comes with it.
There was a few things in this book that were promising to me. One of them was that there have been successful communities that have pushed off or fought off mining, at least that you mentioned. You might have been lying. Some really cool things like experimenting with plants that absorb metals. Yeah. And then also this whole idea of someone mining in space. This was some cool shit. Which one of those do you want to talk about?
Well,
let's talk about the plants, because I love if plants are the answer to all of us.
Isn't that a great idea?
Yeah, that is so cool.
So I absolutely love this. It's one of the many, solutions that I talk about. Yeah. And basically, there are several dozen kinds of plants which suck up different kinds of metal, nickel and other stuff from the soil. Right. And in theory, like, who knew, right?
Right, who knew?
But so in theory, you can plant a bunch of these plants in a place where we have that metal, especially like places that are already like polluted, like where there used to be a mine or whatever. Yeah. They draw it up, and then you like burn the plants, or you somehow pull the metal out of the plants. And it can be done. There are a couple of startups and a couple of research labs working on it. I love the idea. So far, sad to say, it's a long way from any kind of commercial scale.
And you talked about how that was planted somewhere, and then the plant took over and screwed up the whole environment. So that's a bummer.
Yeah, there's always a downside somewhere.
How would we mine in space? And how is this not a movie yet?
Yeah.
But there is someone trying to mine in space.
There are quite a few people trying to mine in space.
How bad do you hate your family if you're like, honey, I got this new idea. I'm going to mine in space. Okay, last question. How can you be a better consumer?
So,
I can't take on a mining company. But how can I do this better? I mean, this is really scary shit you're talking about here.
Yeah. So, so all those things we've been talking about, which is really what, most of the second half of the book is about. But also the number one thing that we as individuals can do is, if possible, don't buy a car.
I know. That was a heavy sentence I read.
I know.
As a man who has 6 cars and 9 motorcycles. That's not true. Why? Why should we not buy a car?
Well, because cars are by far the most material and energy intensive thing that most of us own, except for your house, if you own a house, right? And I'm not saying you're a bad person if you own a car, or even if you own 9 cars, right? I own a car myself. Right? What I am saying is we need to get to a place, we need to reduce the number of cars that are out there. Because if we swap all 1 billion gas cars that are already out there for 1 billion electric vehicles, we're going to swap one set of problems for another. Right. Much better is we got to reduce the number of cars by giving people the freedom to choose whether or not to have a car. Because right now, most places in America, you've got to have a car, right? You need one. Right. But if we can, promote things like bicycling, public transit, getting around by foot, so that fewer people need to own cars, so that more people can choose whether or not they want to own a car, we'll all be much better off.
Thank you for writing a great book. It's a great read. Power Metal is available now. Vince Beiser.